sort of the pilot would sit here, and now here are some reasons why the actual plane crashed. Now, as you can hear, as you heard, the one of the bolts came untied and one of the rudders fell off. The propellers fell off. Now, what this would cause the plane to do in a bi-engine plane is it would turn, since the other propeller would act like a brake almost, and would send the propeller into a twirling motion. So you'd just be spinning around and around and around extremely. In modern day planes now, a lot faster because the engines are a lot more powerful. Now, what would happen is he would try and spin. Nowadays, what you'd have to do is you'd have to feather the engine, which would cause the other engine to not become a brake, and you'd be able to glide. Now, since, of course, there wasn't any flying instructions, and flying was a totally new thing in those times, Windrider had no idea how to actually fly. So when it came down, chances are it came down like this, and he'd fly out, probably breaking multiple bones, like it said, and ruining the actual plane. Now, Grayson, you want to give a basic history?
Yeah. So, the Wright brothers, as children, received a toy helicopter, or what would be a helicopter at the time, from their father, who had come from a business trip to Paris, or from Paris. Now, the boys played with it until it broke. When they broke, they built a new one. They'd always been interested in flying after that. Over time, they'd always thought about flying, but it wasn't their first thing. They both had to drop out of high school because their family had moved from a different house. Originally, I think they lived in Dayton, Ohio. I don't know where they ended up living. Anyway, the brothers eventually decided to start a printmaking thing, and they think the newspaper that they made was called the West Side News, or something similar to that. Anyway, I kept doing that, but eventually they decided to switch over things because they were pretty good at engineering, so they started, a bicycle building slash fixing and engineering shop. So they worked with bicycles for a while, and then they wanted to kind of go back to flying, but they still kept their bicycle shop open. So in 1898, they started work on a 5-foot glider, similar to the 3-foot one that Windrider built that they were flying as a kite, which he eventually let go. So it was much smaller. It had a 5-foot wingspan. This had more like a 20.
It's 24.5 inches.
No.
This one.
This was probably 20 feet in the wingspan, but the
Oh.
original one was 5, and it was very different. This here, now, it was much more simple, and this whole top wing didn't exist.
Yeah.
It was just this, and if I turn it around, this wasn't here, and there were no propellers, and obviously no one could fit inside because it was too small. But they flew it like a kite, and there would have been strings down here where they could kind of, if there was wind, they could kind of glide it along. Then in 1900, they made one that was much bigger, but it still couldn't fit a person because the person would weigh it down too much. Again, it had this, except this wing, there was no top wing, and the bottom wing was actually leveled down here. Again, no front, no propellers, and no people could be in it. It was a lot more simple. There were less braces, and there all these strings that would tie the whole plane together and keep it from falling. These weren't there. And also, if you can see these